Hi, this is Dan here. I hope you're doing really well today. I thought I'd do a really quick bass tone rundown lesson. I've been doing a few sessions recently. I've got a load of different basses, and it got me thinking, like, what bass do you want to get? What basses do you have? You don't need as many basses as I have, but just playing different styles as I do, there are different basses that lend themselves directly to certain styles. So let's start off with this. Now, this is a 1968 Fender Precision, and it's got Jameson Labella flat wounds on it. It's got a very dark, mellow sound. It's got quite a lot of low end, and if you're into old school soul, R&B and Motown, and that's the style of music that you love, then I would suggest get a P bass. Doesn't have to be a 1968. You don't have to sell your kidney to buy this. You can just get a new sort of Fender Squire or Fender Player series. There's 1,000,001 different ones. You can even get a cheap bass, change the pickup. I think Fender do a good 1962 custom pickup that goes straight in. It can be any brand as long as it's sort of a P bass split pickup type thing, and get flat wounds on it, and you're going to get that mellow sound. Now, Pino Palladino, one of the greatest bass players of all time, one of the busiest session players, he uses that setup a lot. P bass, he's got his own signature one, P bass with flat wounds, and it very much works for modern styles as well. Now, let's say funk is your thing. You probably won't want to use that kind of a setup. Now, you can do whatever you like. These are just kind of suggestions and sort of my opinions, but also I've written a funk bass book, I've written a soul R&B Motown book, and when I was researching those, it's amazing how many times that crops up. Obviously, you've got the great James Jameson that used a P bass with flats, and that was pretty much the only choice he had, but that sound was so influential. But for funk, when I was researching the funk book, it was all sort of StingRays and Fender Jazz basses. So this is a MusicMan StingRay. You have this punchier sound. You've got a humbucker pickup here at the bridge. It's a really good position for that punchy, funky, kind of more mid-range sound. This has got volume, and it's just got a 2-band EQ. The modern ones have 3-band EQ, so you can change the treble and the bass on it. And it just has, this one's got a maple neck, so it's just got a bit of brightness to it. It's very good for rock as well. So, you know, if you're into rock or you're into funk, then actually a P bass with stainless steel strings is excellent for rock. It just has a sort of brighter tone that sits well in the mix. I'll show you that actually. This is a 1978 Fender Precision. Don't get too bogged down with vintage. You don't need to get a vintage bass. I sort of went down a rabbit hole years ago. I do love them, and also they at least keep their price or go up in price, so that's one of the other reasons. But this has got a maple neck. This has got stainless steel strings, so it's a brighter sound to the other one you heard. But still, it's got that dark kind of thing going on. These aren't new strings. If you want more of a rocky kind of sound, go for stainless steel strings, and they'll sound a bit more sort of high end. You'll get a bit more high end than you're hearing now. But this is probably my most recorded bass. It just sits well. And what I mean by that is when I record, engineers love this bass because they're thinking the big picture. They've got drums, they've got guitars, and there's something about one of these basses that just, the frequencies just sit well in a mix without having to do too much. So if you're into any kind of recording, I really recommend a P bass. And also, I mean, it just fits well for many, many different styles. But I mean, you can play funk with it. This particular neck is very conducive to sort of fast playing, and many P bass necks aren't. So I think a lot of it is down to the neck and how that feels under your fingers, but also obviously the tone. So we just had the StingRay. I'll show you a Jazz now. So this is my Fender Jazz, and this has got a bridge pickup here and a neck pickup. And that just makes it a bit more versatile. These basses tend to have slimmer necks, easier to play, although this one is chunkier than my P bass. So they're all different. You might want to actually get your hands on a bass before you actually, you know, make any decisions. But, you know, you've got... That is both pickups on. If I solo the back one, you You get a thinner sound because the low end of that front one is gone, but you get that more mid-range Jacko type thing. So, you know, James Jamerson, forever associated with the P bass, Jacko with the jazz bass. And these two players alone, they were really responsible for bringing those sounds into people's ears. And that's another tip, is just, you know, find the players that you like, whose sounds do you like, and find out what they played. If it's someone like Geddy Lee, he's gone through different eras, but my favorite Geddy Lee tone is the jazz bass tone. Again, I sort of favor the mellower side of things. You know, bass tone can be dark, it can be light, or, you know, bright, I mean to say. And if I'm going for the Geddy Lee tone, I would want to change these strings, brand new bright stainless steel strings, add a bit of overdrive, and you can do that with a jazz bass. It's a very versatile thing. Speaking of brightness, here I've got a 1982 Ibanez Roadster, the cheapest bass I own, but possibly the best actually. Maple neck tends to have a sort of brighter sound to it. So these strings are a little newer. It's got a really great sound to it. I love this bass. The pickups are DiMarzio's, and this is a different configuration. You've got the jazz bass pickup at the back, and you've got the P bass. This configuration never sounds like one or the other. You know, it doesn't sound exactly like a jazz bass, doesn't sound exactly like a P bass, but you can, you know, you can solo the front pickup. So this is your P bass. And then this is the back pickup. You get a real punchy mid-range sound there, but you may get lost a little bit. So this doesn't have an EQ section on it. This is a passive bass. So you might go to your amp, add a little bit more bass in, or have an EQ pedal or something like that to add a little bit more low end in if you're going to. But what you get with a PJ kind of configuration, who uses one of those, Victor Wooten probably is the most famous bass player who has that configuration, you get kind of a very versatile bass. Don't forget that you can change tones with your hands as well. So a little bit of palm muting, thumb, you can sort of get a lot more of a low end thing. That's kind of Marcus Miller, when he was playing sessions, he used his thumb because he often wanted to poke out in the mix a bit more. Even on ballads, he would. It's all about what music you want to create and what different styles you're into. If you're into one style, that's great. If you're in a covers band playing different styles, then get a bass that is more conducive to that. I was about to wrap up there, but I'll just quickly show you the bass that I've used the most. Nearly 20 years actually I've used this. This is a MusicMan StingRay 5-string. Now I take this out for most gigs that I do. I haven't done a gig in so long because of a pandemic and moving to a different country. That's a different story. But it has a 5th string on it, so I may do a gig where I never go to that, but it's there if I need it. So this is just an all-round bass, and it's got a preamp on it. So this is the flat sound. It's really easy to play. It feels good under my fingers. I'm very used to it. If I want to add a little bit more bass in, if I want to add a bit more treble in, perhaps for a slap tone, I can do that. That's why I like this bass, because I just like the flat tone where nothing's going on, but I can do a few things very, very quickly to get a different tone I want. Look, this is true actually, yeah. I did a gig with, you know, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. She's a Motown star for any of you youngsters. And, you know, you don't turn up to one of her gigs with one of these, but I did. And no one cared. I think one of the horn section guys told me jokingly I was going to get fired, but I set everything flat, and you know, you could even, you know, if you play here, you get a sort of more mellow sound. Put a mute in there. Use your hand, it doesn't matter. People don't really care what you use, as long as it sounds good, as long as it sounds in tune, and as long as you're playing well, then that's what they care about. And that's my final huge tip when it comes to gear, and it's really difficult, and I fall down into this trap all the time. And that is spend 20% of your time thinking about gear, cables, amps, pedals, string gauges and all that. Spend 80% of your time on the elements of great bass playing. Your timing, your tone, your technique, you know, your fretboard knowledge. Spend as much time as you can on that stuff. It's very easy to get drawn into the gear kind of vacuum, okay? You just need a decent bass that's set up, and don't overthink it, okay? I've got a new course from beginner to bassist. I'll put a link to it, and that teaches you loads of things from theory to reading. That's really going to help your bass playing. So thanks very much for watching that video. I do love gear. I know you do too, so I'm not saying, you know, don't get obsessed with it, because it is cool. But if you do have any questions on that, the course, or anything else, then leave it in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.